Thank you, and we're happy to be back here. I'm very, very pleased to have this talk today about corporate green investment. So let's talk about that and see how there are a lot of thoughts going on, and there'll be a talk about a lot about startup investment and technology investment, and we would really like to kind of figure out what are companies doing in their pursuit of the green technologies. That's the kind of the short things. I brought the best of the best to this beautiful day here. Camilla from Hansen. We have Anna from Maersk, and we have Mario from Novozymes. I will let you introduce yourself because you do a better job than I do. And we start with Camilla.
Yes, so my name is Camilla. I'm with Hansen, which is a global bioscience company where I head up sustainability and ESG. I've been with the company for 6 years, and it's been a tremendous journey so far. Hansen is almost 150 years old, so been around the block for quite some time. Still, I feel like we have so much to explore from a technological perspective, and especially with the pace that we see sustainability kind of sweeping the world these days. So our focus area, if I should highlight that, is we work with bacteria and enzymes. So that we can put them into ingredients that goes into food, health, and agriculture. And they can help us in the battles of fighting food waste, lowering the use of antibiotic and pesticides, getting more out of less from farm to fork. Yeah.
Fantastic. Anna?
So my name is Andonovska, and I work at Maersk Drilling as an innovation lead. So my role is to help Maersk Drilling identify new growth opportunities within sustainability and digital. I've been with the company for 8 months now, so quite new. And my background is, for the last kind of previous 3 years, I worked with large corporates to help them work with startups, green technologies, innovate. And the last project that I worked on was running a decarbonization program in Singapore for the shipping industry.
Thank you. Mario.
My turn. Okay, so my name is Mario Augusto M. I'm the head of investments at Novozymes. I'm based here in Copenhagen as well. Many of you might not know, but Novozymes is a global leader in industrial biotechnology, which essentially means that we are a biology-based company. So a lot of what we develop, a lot of what we make, a lot of what we sell, it has a very strong sustainability angle to it, be it to replace chemicals, be it to reduce energy consumption, be it to improve the health of soils, or be it to improve the quality of water. So a lot of what we do, we're very fortunate because this whole sustainability and green transition is very much embedded into what we do. And that affects the way we also look at innovation and also how we invest. Now we're a company that has a very strong history of internal innovation. So we spend 13 to 14% of our sales every single year on R&D. So we're very proud of everything we have achieved and how the business has been built around our internal innovation. But that's one component of how we consider innovation and how we look at technologies. And we do different things on the external front. One of them is the part of the business that I run, which is Novozymes Investments, which is primarily focused on assessing, making, and managing minority investments in startups, as well as VC funds that fit within our strategic areas of focus. So I will probably comment more on that later, but I've been with Novozymes since 2018. Prior to that, I spent 15 years in financial markets, always with a strong linkage to sustainability and ESG. I spent 6 years running a global fund that I was investing in food and agriculture with very strict parameters around sustainability. And back in 2009, I was heading the ESG operations for Bank of America Merrill Lynch in Australia for their equities research business. So I've been part of the ESG sort of journey from its humble beginnings. It's fascinating to see how it has evolved. It's fascinating to see how corporates have embraced it. And also it's very fascinating to see how investors have changed their perceptions about ESG and sustainability. So we have seen a lot of change over those 12 long years, but I think there's a lot more that we need to do. And I think this panel is a great way to see how we, as corporates, can play a role into doing so.
Fantastic. So we have with us three of, if you're a Dane, there's no way that you can avoid knowing, where you guys are working, where all of you are working. We are mainly brought up in this country to look into career opportunities with some of the places that you work, right? So these are really with 150 years of history, and I don't even remember what Maersk is, how old is Maersk?
Maersk Drilling is from the 70s.
Yeah, see how Maersk Drilling, yeah?
Yes.
But that comes from that.
Yes.
All right, so my question would be, you were a little bit into this, and I know that Christian Hansen's always kind of been focusing on it is embedded, sustainability is embedded in your DNA, but has it really been a change of shift within the corporate investment? Has sustainability created this shift, or are we experiencing it, or can we expect it to come, or is it business as usual? Start with you, Camilla.
Yeah, so for sure, I believe that we have seen a tremendous shift in recent years. And it's really positive to see now that investors and asset managers are really paying attention to all the ESG drivers. For us in Christian Hansen, we've also experienced that when we, 2006, started working with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, and we were in dialogue with investors, I would also say that we at that time had a gentle push from investors saying, okay, but can you then document how does the SDGs relate to your products? So that actually initiated a really great journey where we developed a method where we mapped more than 3,000 of our products, which is basically all our products, up against the SDG drivers. And in that way, our products chose the SDGs that we are now focusing on today. And we work with PwC to help review that methodology so that today we can demonstrate that around 81% of our revenue supports the UN global goals. And I would say that that was also kind of initiated by investors, and since then it has only been like this. Today we also do ESG roadshows with investors, and it has a really profound focus.
Awesome. Anna?
Yeah, I think sustainability, what I have seen in kind of my previous role in shipping, but also now in Maersk Drilling, has been a huge push for change. And a huge push for investment in new technologies and in green technologies. And Maersk Drilling as such has its own sustainability goal with tangible kind of ways how we're going to get there, and want to reduce emissions by 50% at least by 2030. So it's very exciting time, but I would say that in general, in energy and shipping, you can see a huge movement towards tech investments for green future, yeah.
Mario?
Yeah, I echo the comments, and I think one thing that's becoming very interesting is that basically, and back to your original question, the kind of, how is that sustainability shifting also corporate investments? And what we actually seen for the last maybe 18 months or 24 months is that investments are somehow allowing corporates to execute on their sustainability ambitions in a way that they haven't done before. And there are some great examples from some prominent corporates out there. It might be Unilever announcing a 1 billion euros biotech fund to reduce chemicals and carbon in household care products, or it could be sustainable packaging fund from Nestle. It can be climate pledge fund from Amazon, or could be Danone. I mean, and the list goes on and on and on. And what's interesting about all those initiatives is basically that those corporates are telling us, hey, we have to tackle those sustainability issues, and we're finding that one of the ways of doing that is actually going and tapping into those startup ecosystems and working with those innovators and looking at those technologies and say, hey, how can we do that with those guys? And I think it's incredibly powerful, because the more we see that happening, the stronger the ecosystem in itself becomes. And as far as sustainability is concerned, we need to see that. We need to see more capital flowing into it. We need to see more backing. And now you have this very strong backing from very large corporates going to that space. And that means that in turn, they start attracting more talents to go into those ecosystems. You have more VC capital going to those systems, and you have other corporates going to that. So over time, if we continue to see this evolution, it will be incredibly positive for the whole sustainability agenda that we all have. And there is a good chance that this whole process potentially increase the odds that we can make this green transition perhaps a little bit faster and a little bit sooner than we thought before.
Yeah, and just another comment. I also strongly believe that now that we're seeing the financials markets tilting their their money towards sustainable companies, it's a silver bullet, of course. I mean, it generates a lot of not only energy for the companies that have been green for a long time, but I also think that it really makes the companies that are still tapping into going green, convincing them at least that going green is a commercial opportunity.
Yeah. But it's the same with talent. If you want to attract the right talent, then you have to have the sustainability agenda. Otherwise, it will be really hard.
Yeah, that's the investment. Investment to me is when I talk to corporates, to our corporate partners, they talk about investment in new technologies, but also they talk a lot about investment in talent, right? And this is another discussion, but it's a very solid point that without the talent you can't really do the other investment. I hear a lot of ESG, and for someone who actually operates within the green ecosystem and all of these things, even I have difficulties to understand and navigate within the ESG itself, right? So are we, because everybody now is you know, I think one of the most rising careers is to becoming a ESG officer or something right now. So have we found the model within the ESG, or is it any other way that you can vet a technology that is being sustainable? Do we need new tools, or is it enough with ESGs? You start with you, Maersk.
Yes, well, look, I think it's a work in progress, and you're right. You kind of, we for the last probably 12 to 18 months, we have seen this surge into the whole ESG push, which is great, but it also leads to a little bit of greenwashing and everyone trying to sort of self-promote what they're doing. But generally, it's a very positive movement. But by no means we have the right ESG, single report and that we can use. There are lots of tools out there. There's a lot of different options that corporates have, investors have, and I think they're all still trying to figure out which is the best way to go about it. The way I like to think about ESG is really not even so much about the metrication, which is already coming through and it's becoming more pronounced, but it's just in terms of how that is embedded into a long-term strategy and how resilient your business is, how attractive your business model is in the very long run. Because I think for me, that's where ESG as a former investor really matters. It's about looking at corporates that have embedded those values into their own strategic thinking.
But isn't it too, I'm sorry to say it, but I'm just going to challenge you with this one. Isn't it just too easy to say, I am ESG or SDG 5, I work with SDG 6, and we have on the, this is beautiful colors, I love them. But we see it all the way. And for you to really invest in a technology that is going to build the future of your company, you surely would need more than a couple of nice words.
Yeah.
Oh yes, absolutely. You got to cut on the, you got to cut through the PR, which happens with startups, it happens with technologies, and also happens with corporates. And that's where doing the work and understanding fundamentally how the value chain changes. Because I think that's what the end, what it really matters. It's about where the technology is going to be positioned and how the chain has to evolve for that technology to turn into something commercial. And that's your own homework, and that's where you have to dig into it. So you're not going to get all the answers you need from a nice pitch deck or from a nice press release. Might give you some hints of what they actually do or not, but it's up to the investor, or up to the corporate investor or financial investor to do the digging and do the homework.
All right, Camilla.
So when I think of ESG, I think it of as a way to take the focus of a company that by nature for numbers of years in history have been focused on making profit, right? Bottom line, results, financials. Whereas the ESG paradigm and the whole system around it, which is actually quite data-driven and therefore quite systemic, it also, this is the way to ensure that corporations are creating a sustainable profit for all stakeholders, so that we go beyond just the bottom line of the financials, but that we also make sure that the well-being of our employees, we have climate considerations, we're committing ourselves to diverse and inclusion agendas. And I think in general what the ESG, because there are also ratings and indexes in this world of ESG, is making everyone trying to kind of raise the bar.
Yeah. And I think beyond leadership, it also gives employees a reason to speak out and speak up when they see something is not working. Now they have a kind of something to back it up against. And I think it's, when we talk about are SDGs enough to measure something, I would say they're not. They're more like a framework, I would say, because that's a big difference between investment in a corporate versus a VC world, where as a VC, you might buy the vision, but as a corporate, you need to see that it really works. So most often corporates invest in much later stage where they can see that product actually works rather than just buying the vision, because corporates invest for strategic reasons, not financial reasons. So I think SDGs are a great framework and guidance for many startups and corporates, but I think the actual technology needs to be proven that it works for a corporate to really invest in a startup.
Fantastic. I want to get sustainably. We work with community acceleration within the greenfield. So the collaboration between community and all the stakeholders is extremely important to us. Of course, so I'm happy that you mentioned it. So we don't think we are the only one thinking that is important. I know that you have at Novozymes, you have a platform called Hello Science,
Yes,
which is
correct.
basically built on a helix model of innovation, right? Can you explore a little bit on that?
Yeah, so basically we have an open innovation platform which is called Hello Science, and the premise of this platform is basically to allow very early stage, prototypes, new type of innovative ideas, but super early stage, and find a way of linking that to applied research, to commercial innovation, to social innovation. And the way we do this by basically using strategic partnerships. So, we have a number of different partners who are involved in the process, and they mentor, they provide support to some of those entrepreneurs so they can get to an MVP stage and then they can move forward. So it's very SDG driven. It's not something that necessarily is designed for Novozymes to benefit purely from. We may, but I think it's more about trying to create a little bit of buzz around innovation in the ESG front and making sure that we can use a model, a more collaborative model that allows those ideas to make the progress they need to make to again, becoming something that has the potential to be commercial.
Awesome. And Anna, mass growth, the way that I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of that growth strategy lies within the sustainability area.
Yeah, so Maersk Growth is part of the Maersk Group, and we are a separate company.
All right.
So I'm not sure what their strategy is, but I know that they focus largely on logistics.
All right. Yeah. And how do you work with startups in your department?
Maersk Drilling. So in Maersk Drilling, we collaborate and partner with startups quite often, and it's always based on a predefined need or a strategy that we follow. And I would say that from previous experience, I can share that there are a lot of corporates exploring startup collaborations, and some of them work. But for many companies, it's really hard to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to just being really two very different cultures.
Yeah.
But also, if you don't have a specific strategy for why you want to work with a startup, I think it's really hard to just come in as inside as an employee in a corporate and say, I think we should work with this startup. Why? What is the strategy? What do we want to achieve? So I think it's, for many companies, going outside and looking at startups is often kind of the innovation theater, unfortunately. It gives a lot of PR, but in the background, it's really hard to make it work for real.
I know, because I know a lot of startups who are really crying out.
Yes.
It's really difficult. In the beginning, it's always kind of, it's like a happy marriage, and then everybody is so happy, and then goes 5 months, and then the corporates are crying over lack of the structure of the startup. The startup is crying over lack of velocity and action, and then
it's really hard.
Yeah, and we breaking it. Camilla, how are you working with external partners? Is it more like, do you work with startups within the biosystem?
Yes.
Do you buy up companies that are already existing? Is there any kind of primary strategy for how you work with corporate innovation on that part?
No, I wouldn't say it's a defined strategy. It really depends on which business area that we're talking. Some of our business areas are very mature, have been around for plus 100 years, and in other areas we are really entering something that is new, but where we believe potential is big. Let me give you an example of two different ways. The first thing being that we work with fermentation and good bacteria, and we believe that these bacteria can bring a lot of health to humans. So in order to kind of create the medicine of tomorrow, which we kind of refer to in daily speak as box for drugs, we have made a joint venture with a Swiss pharma manufacturing company where we are going to try to research into the future of medicine being live bacteria instead of traditional medicine. But that's with a Swiss company called Lonza, and they're like 10 times as big as us. So that's kind of one partnership. Another one could be that we have made plant-based food a lighthouse. So we also want to make ingredients that can accelerate that we eat more greens. And for that scene, we're super dependent on really listening to consumer needs and also teaming up with the people and the entrepreneurs that are really have the right kind of reality check on the food scene. So in that sense, with plant-based foods, we're collaborating with Michelin chefs, vegan meal box providers, those kind of So it's kind of really broad. We don't want to put ourselves in a box.
No. All right. Awesome. You're all based in the Greater Copenhagen area as a company. Are we a good place for corporate investment, or are you looking more internationally, and how do we kind of as a region are supporting this process? What should we do better?
Using Novozymes as an example, we have invested in many startups in Denmark, but we also have invested in companies in Australia, in the US, and in other parts of the world. So for us, we don't try to necessarily limit us into a particular region, because at the end it's really about what kind of technologies you're interested in and what kind of fields you're looking for. So, and I think most corporate investors will probably have that broader time horizon as well, and broader spectrum. Now, if the idea is to attract more corporate investment in Copenhagen, I think we already have a very strong element of, we actually have a global brand of sustainability around Denmark that perhaps we don't appreciate when we're here, but it's out there. So I guess the question is really how we can capitalize on that and attract more investment. Now, attracting corporate investment, I think, will be a consequence of attracting financial investment. Yeah. And it's also a function of attracting international talent to move here and attract international startups to relocate here. So it's all about the ecosystem, and it is really what we need to do to build an ecosystem that's attractive enough to be bringing all those companies here without obviously losing the uniqueness of Copenhagen and of Denmark. Yeah. But I think it's really about trying to see how we can make this as friendly to international investors and startups and entrepreneurs as possible, to try to create this melting pot, because that's what makes a very exciting sort of innovation hub.
By the way, I did not pay him to say this. This is what we do. Thank you so much. Can I comment on that?
Yep.
About 2.5 years ago, we went to Curitiba in Brazil, because we wanted to do SDG Tech Awards in Brazil. And while I was there, during the event, it was plugged into another bigger event called Connect. And then the mayor was visiting this place, and he passed by, and he said, "Oh, okay, who are you? This is an award." And I speak a little bit Portuguese, and I said, "No, but we are from Denmark." And he would look at me and say, "No, you don't look very Danish." But anyways, so we talked, and as soon as he understood that we were from Denmark, his word was, "Okay, you are the most sustainable country in the world, is visiting the most sustainable city in Brazil. Why don't you come and visit me tomorrow?" And the next day, we actually met with him, and told us about that they're building a new strategy for the whole region, state, not only for the city. And I should talk to the governor. So set up a meeting with the governor. And at the end of the day, we were actually partnering up to build the first green tech park in Brazil, just because we were from Denmark. We were a small company. I think we had about 9 months of existence behind us, and that was it. So we have a lot of history and the branding and positioning that we work with. Is that something that you as Maersk Drill experience by saying we are a Danish company? No, I mean Maersk is just almost part of Denmark, right?
I mean, the fact that the heritage comes from the Nordics, we have a certain Nordic culture, and sustainability is definitely part of that. Caring for your employees is part of that, of course. So I think we definitely carry that, and I just echo what you said, that as a global company, you don't really have issues looking for startups outside of Denmark, because it's relatively easy because they understand the brand, they know the brand, especially if they work in the same space, they have seen the logo somewhere. So there is no particular reason to be focused only on Denmark. With that being said, we do partner a lot and work with the local ecosystem, with universities and so on. But when it comes to looking for investments, then it's quite broad, and there are no geographical limitations, really.
Yeah, and that's it, because when it comes to sustainability, as a country, we are ranked, I think we are ranked second in the world right now. And when it comes to SDGs, I think we are ranked number 1. When it comes to green investment, we are somewhere around number 45, what I heard about. Camilla, how do we work with this?
So in my perspective, I mean, we of course all have like a fundamental role in nurturing that good reputation that Denmark has as a green state. But I think that we also need to realize that to stay ahead of the game and maintain that position, we also need to reinvent ourselves. And we strongly believe at Christian Hansen that also comes with actually having an international outlook while being in Denmark and having that hub and that special status that we have in the world, but that we need to foster and attract diverse talents so that we can build teams that has a global perspective. Because I think also for most Danish companies, success comes from when you go across the border. So we're super dependent on being challenged on our perceptions all the time. And that really back to international talent that has and diverse workforces.
All right.
And if you try and compare Denmark to Singapore, then you can also see the difference of investment in green tech. I mean, Singapore is way ahead of Denmark, right?
Yes, and that's kind of the challenge that we have, because we rest a lot in our branding, but we forget that the rest of the world is actually moving on this agenda, and they are as eager as we, even more. They look at us and say, okay, we should be there, and it's the global competition. Yeah. I was listening to the talk prior to this one about systemic changes and systemic investment. So just inspired by that, I would like to ask you if you are somehow working with a systemic investment. Are you looking into changing some of the systems that you used to work with, to kind of go back and see how can we fix these things by changing the system? You can think about it, because I did not prepare you for this one.
I think when I think of systemic change, I also feel like looking to the political scene, because when we see policymakers and regulators take action on sustainability agendas, that accelerates a certain kind of innovation within the company. So for example, one of the things that we are quite occupied with is EU's farm to fork strategy, where the EU Commission has stated an ambition that we need to lower the use of antibiotic and pesticides by 50% before 2030. So we have 10 years. The problem is that, for example, Christian Hansen has a biological pesticide that can somehow very often replace a chemical pesticide. but the approval process in the EU takes between 5 and 7 years. Whereas, for example, in Brazil and the US, it takes 1 to 2 years to get a biological pesticide on the market. So in that way, you know, we're really trying to awake the policymakers to say if you are setting ambitious targets, you also need a more a regulatory environment that can fast-track green investments so that we don't just sit back for 7, 8 years waiting for an approval, and then we're really busy making that 50% reduction target in only 2, 3 years left, where we could actually get started next year.
Awesome.
So systemic change can also come from political
Regulations, driven
action.
by that.
Yeah.
EU taxonomy is being introduced. And I have talked to people who work within the EU, and they have not fully they have a complete picture of what it means. Have you been looking into that? And how it impacts your investment?
Not to a great extent, apart from basically just trying to get a basic understanding of it, given that we look at our investments on a global scale, and a lot of our investments are made in areas where we already have divisions and parts of the business that also basically allows us to be making investments in those subsidiaries, which add a new, an even greater complexity to the whole taxonomy element of it. But I think a lot of the time we're really trying to spend more time really into figuring out, you know, what kind of companies we'll be investing in and the technology we go, and the taxonomy. You know, if that's becoming a driver or a deal breaker for us, it probably means that you're probably not looking at the right investment anyway.
All right. All right. I have one question for you, Anna. There are a lot of startup ecosystem builders like us who are trying to reach out to companies and say, hey, we can help you with your innovation radar and matchmake you within the green or within this field. And have you ever experienced using those services? And is that a path that you're looking for in your collaboration? Or do you prefer to go out and find them yourself?
We already work with quite a few, mostly based in the US.
Yeah.
And I would say, I also worked on the other side before, so I know both sides. And I would say it's, we work with those type of systems, and we constantly get contacted by different providers, right, that offer different services. And I would say it works, again, if you have a specific strategy of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to get, again, into this innovation theater and just go on a demo day and take pictures and go home and be happy, and then don't bring any results the next week, month, or even a year. So I think it can work, for sure. It's one channel of getting things done. And certainly it kind of, they do most of the job, right? They find you the right startups and so on. But again, if you don't have a specific strategy to follow, then you don't really get results in the end.
All right. So you need to have the right strategy in order to use those matchmaking.
Yes.
You use the HelloScience as a part of your innovation radar as well.
Yeah, HelloScience will be one of many tools that we look at. But I think Anna made a really good point, which is you have to know exactly what you're looking for or have very defined parameters around it. Otherwise, you find yourself probably throwing wet paper on the wall to see what sticks. And it becomes a very counterproductive exercise when you're looking for investments. But for us, I think it's about having a multitude of ways to basically bring the deal flow towards us. So HelloScience might be one way of doing that. We do a lot of search ourselves. We have companies who attract us and call us and reach out to us directly. So ideally, what you want is really the whole deal flow to eventually come to you. So you can actually do the filtering and probably have the best possible startups coming your way. But I think that's a long journey, and I think it's also a function of how well established your corporate investment might be,
yes,
and how you perceived externally as well. So, and I think that's why some of those announcements and those initiatives that have been announced that I mentioned earlier on are so important, because basically what all those companies, Unilever, Amazon, Nestle are doing, they're shifting the deal flow towards them. All the sustainability-related innovators and startups say, hey, we got to go and talk to those guys. And that's very powerful because basically, it removes a lot of the noise, a lot of the startups that don't really fit into what you're looking for. and you can, do a lot of your screening and your selection based on your own parameters rather than on the parameters of suppliers or service providers.
Fantastic. Do you, as companies, collaborate? And I know that you do, but I would like to ask Camilla, how do you work with other companies when it comes to corporate investment and green innovation?
So one of the things that we have been doing in terms of the startup scene, because I know that's an interest of the audience today, is we have joined a startup accelerator in San Francisco called MISTA, where we are trying to pioneer the future of food within plant-based foods, together with both some peers, but also some of our customers. And that has been like, we were a bit curious how this would go down during the pandemic, where we couldn't actually travel to be together, but it actually seems like they have had quite a good virtual working method together. So, I mean, that's one thing, right? Kind of starting partnerships, and I think in general we need to think as corporations of doing more untraditional things, where maybe 10 years ago you wouldn't have joined such a partnership, whereas today unconventional thinking is what drives innovation, and putting the players together around the same table that really can complement each other and make you chase new paths. Yeah.
Yes. Christian Hansen won the award as the most sustainable company last year, right?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. All right. When are you going to get that title back?
Yeah, we're working hard on it, but I would say one thing that I always kind of preach when I talk about sustainability is that it's not a competition. We don't see this as a competition. We see this as the more people we can get involved and kind of join forces, we can change things faster. So we're continually trying to improve ourselves on all kind of parameters. But I think also when dropping a little bit on that ranking, for us it's also a sign that more people are stepping up on the game. So that's only positive.
I guess you received more job applications.
I think it's mentioned in almost all the job applications. Yeah. But that's also great, right? That the companies that has a sustainability profile can attract great minds. And in general, I really think that sustainability is in such an interesting place right now, because it used to be a corporate function where a little headquarter team was kind of running and managing global programs, whereas today, sustainability is everywhere. There's no function in Christian Hansen where having a sustainable mindset is not relevant. Everyone can be a climate hero. Everyone can apply the mindset of carbon reductions in their daily work, no matter if you work at the canteen and you want to fight food waste, or if you're in production and you're in sourcing. So it's a really, really interesting change that we're seeing right now, where no matter the educational background, you can have a sustainability career. It's not just for my team and I.
Fantastic. I just have to check if I have more time. I don't have more time. But I would like to end up with one quick remark for as your advice to the community in the Greater Copenhagen. If you have one, how can we help you better?
The community, you mean?
The green community.
The green community. I'll let Camilla take the stage first.
Okay, I'll try. In general, we're very much watching like the startup scene and the consumer trends. And for me, it's like for the startups to keep pioneering their fields is a great aspiration for us, because that gives us, we can move as fast as the startups. So to having that ecosystem of especially within the food scene, Copenhagen is really amazing. So in Christian Hansen, we feel quite fortunate being placed in Copenhagen, where there's a lot of innovation on the food scene, and also that we can use. Denmark has been a leader and also an expert success when it comes to food for many years. And I really believe that, for example, plant-based could be the next commercial success for Christian Hansen, and we can definitely only do this if we work in partnerships with the smaller plant-based startups, the chefs that know about taste, because it's definitely a fact that if we really want to see plant-based food go mainstream, taste is going to be king.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I would say bring more talent and help them stay, and perhaps connect the investment community more with corporates. We learned in one of the panel discussions before that the big gap for investment is post-seed around Series A, and that's where corporates can actually invest because the technology is far ahead enough, but it's still early enough for them to kind of get to know the startup and everything. So I think there is something in connecting those two.
Next year. All right, awesome. Mario?
Yeah, so for Novozymes, actually, we are very fortunate because there is a very well-developed sort of biotech and life science platform in Copenhagen and in Denmark in general, which works to our advantage in many ways. So we do a lot of work with the universities and startups. But I think there is still a gap to be filled, which is the kind of the valley of death, which is companies and startups who have the technology and it's ready to scale up, but they can't get quite there into the scaling up stage, and that's where you need pilot planting and you need a lot of support around
Scaling
that
partner.
to really go into that scaling. We can help on certain fronts, but I think if we had a more developed ecosystem around that and having more developed pilot plant systems that we have, for example, in the US and in Germany and other parts of the world, I think that would go a long way for getting some of those technologies and really showing how they can get to a commercial scale.
Thank you so much for being very concrete, all of you. It has all been noted. And thank you again for your contribution.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for having us. Thanks.